Good morning, my dears. I am sorry that I'm not able to be with you today, but here is the learning that we would do. First, I would like for you to make sure you have your folder, you have your whiteboard, you have your marker, eraser, and pencil. If you do not have those things, please pause this and then go get them. If you do have them, the next step is we need to find yourself a partner and someone that you can talk to. You might end up being in a group of 3, and you'll have to figure out how to listen to this with all 3 of you. With 2 of you, I'm hoping you might have some earbuds you could share, or maybe you watch on your own video and then you pause when you need to turn to a partner, and you'll pause and work together then. Okay, so go ahead and pause so you can get your partner and figure that out. Are you going to need to use 2 devices and just pause and talk when you're supposed to? Remember, that will include some patience and some compassion and some extreme teamwork too. All right, now that you are set up and ready to learn for our warm-up today, we are going to, on your whiteboard, write down what the directions say. It says that each tape diagram represents one whole. Write the fraction that the shaded amount represents. On your whiteboards, write down what is the shaded amount that fraction represents. All right, you should have written 1/3 because the whole is cut up into 1, 2, 3 units. It's partitioned into 3, and 1/3 is shaded in. All right, the next one, erase your boards. What fraction does this shaded amount represent? We have a whole. It is cut into 4 pieces, and that becomes our denominator. And 2 are shaded, so we would say that 2/4 are shaded. Nice job. On to the next one. I just wanted to review your exit tickets with you. You do not have those right now. I did want to let you know that there were lots of 3s. Nice job. The only errors that I really saw were that some people forgot to shade in these to show that there were 2 separate amounts, or some people forgot to label those brackets. So you'll see that when I return next week. So our main lesson today is I can represent fractions by using various fraction models. So I want you to talk to your partner after you hear the question and pause the video about what are some models we have used so far to represent fractions. So you'll pause the video, turn and talk. What are some models we have used to show fractions? Pause and go. Okay, you just did a turn and talk about the various fraction models. I hope that you talked about a number line. We've been using number lines, which we know are still a little bit tricky for us. I hope you talked about tape diagrams, right? We've been drawing the rectangle and showing the tape diagram. I think I could try to draw one real quick. So we had a tape diagram. Hopefully you talked about, I said already, the number line. We have also done a lot of work with an equation, like we might have said that 2/3, ooh, this is hard to write with, equals 1/3 plus 1/3. So we've done some work with equations, and I'm hoping that you remember back to 3rd grade, even if we haven't done it yet this year, that you could do circle models. So if we did 2/3, it's a circle, and then we shade in 2 parts. So my parts were not very equal because I'm trying to write on the screen. So pretend imagination again. And then the other thing that we would have talked about would be using those fraction strips at our table. So we've actually used some manipulatives and the plastic fraction pieces at our table. And those basically are our tape diagram when we use those. So we've used lots of models so far. And today we're just going to begin to use one more model. So we will continue on with our lesson for today. Okay. Today, we are going to practice using an area model. We have used an area model in multiplication, and we have used one in division. For an area model, as we are working with fractions, it says to draw a square area model and use a bracket to indicate it represents 1. So on your whiteboards, I want you to draw with me a nice big square. Remember, a square has all sides equal. There's my square. Now we need to represent 1 by drawing our brackets and then putting the 1 on top. So this square represents 1 whole. We don't know what the 1 whole is, but it's 1 whole. Maybe it's 1 whole cake. I like cake. All right, so now there it is. We're going to use our area model, and we're going to do a little bit more thinking. We can represent a fractional amount in this 1 whole, and we're going to represent 1/2. So to do that, we should know how many parts. 1/2, how many parts do we cut this into then? Yeah, our denominator tells us 2. So we're going to draw our line and make 2 parts. Please do that on your whiteboard. But to show it's 1/2, we have to do some shading. So we're going to shade what the numerator tells us. And the numerator is a 1, so we're going to shade in 1 of the units. We partitioned it into 2. We're going to shade in 1. And now we've made 1/2. So get ready, a turn and talk is coming. You'll have to pause the video after the question to talk with each other. How is this area model different from a tape diagram? Pause and turn and talk about that question. How is this different from a tape diagram? I hope you said the only difference between an area model and a tape diagram is that the area model is a square and our tape diagram has been a rectangle. Otherwise, the thinking is the exact same way. We could also show this quickly in a circle model, since we haven't done those a lot. To do that, you can erase your area model, and then we draw a big circle. And since the fraction is 1/2, we know already the denominator says we'll cut it into 2 pieces. And how many would we shade? 1. Let's shade our 1. We've now reviewed 3rd grade thinking and how we can put a circle as our model to make fractions. Okay, so now we have another model represented. And this model, you are hopefully thinking, is a number line. So we can use a number line to represent fractions. Okay? And we know that this model is showing us 6/8 miles because it tells us the unit here is miles. So that's maybe somebody went for a run or they went for a walk. They took a really short drive. So some of you might actually walk 6/8 miles when you walk to school every day. So we have the number line. I would like you to talk to your partner about how does this number line show or represent 6/8 miles. Pause and turn and talk. Okay, I hope you talked about how you know the number line has 1 whole because it goes from 0 to 1. And then I hope you recognize that the whole was cut up into 8 parts. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. And that 6 of those 8 parts have been shaded in. So that's how we know it shows 6/8. We're now going to draw an area model to represent this fraction. So an area model we talked about is not a rectangle. It has to be a square. So let's draw the square. Make sure we're not making a tape diagram. Okay, we'll do our best. Okay. Then we know because of the denominator, our denominator tells us how many parts. We're going to cut it into 8, and I think it's easiest to cut it in half. Cut the half in half, cut those parts in half, and just do our very best to make those equal parts. Okay, I now have 8 pieces, and I'm going to pretend and use my imagination that they're all exactly the same size because fractions have to be equal parts. And now we know we're going to color in 6 pieces because the numerator tells us that. So color in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighths are now shaded. Okay, and that's an area model, just like a tape diagram, but a square instead of a rectangle. You should also be able to answer a question like, how many parts are not shaded? Tell your partner real fast, how many parts are not shaded? I hope you said 2/8. Now we have a number line and we have an area model on our screen. I'm going to show you an equation. You'll have to pause and just turn and talk about how the equation is shown in both the number line and the area model. Pause, turn and talk. How is the equation represented in both the number line and the area model? I hope you talked about how the total amount shaded in is 6/8 or 6/8, and that's the total. And to get that in unit fractions, it would be 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. You might even have thought about how you could decompose it differently and do 4/8 plus 2/8. That's an example that I just gave you. On your whiteboard, write down some other ways you could write an equation for 6/8. I gave an example of 6/8 equals 4/8 plus 2/8. Go ahead and work. Now that you've come back from doing your thinking, you might have done 3/8 plus 3/8. That's one way. You could make 6/8. I had already given the example. I'm just going to come over to this side. 4/8 plus 2/8. You could also have done, I'm going to come up to here, 5/8 plus 1/8. And those are just some of the other ways you could have decomposed and gotten 6/8. Okay, on to their example together. I hope. Okay, here is our next example. So tell your partner real fast, what kind of diagram are we looking at right now? I hope you said, this is a tape diagram. And I hope you said it in a complete sentence. All right, so now we're going to practice making all of the different models that we know today, because our objective was that we can represent fractions in various models, and various means many. So we have our tape diagram, and we need to figure out, well, what does this tape diagram actually represent? So we're first going to find out the number of parts and how many parts are shaded in. So we can start. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 total parts. That means that is our denominator. How many are shaded in? 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12, 5/12, 6/12, 7/12. 7/12 are shaded in. So now we are just going to take some time practicing making each model. The first model we're going to make is an area model. That's our new one from today. We're going to draw a nice big, not rectangle, but a square. And of course we're starting with 12 parts, which is a lot of parts to try to draw. So let's give it our best shot. Let's draw 12 equal parts. I know 4 times 3 is 12, so I'm doing 4 parts, and then I'm going to try to cut each part, each of those fourths, into 3. And that will help me get to 12. Okay, I should have 12 parts. If it's not perfect, that's okay. We know this is a little bit tricky. I'd rather you spend your time thinking than erasing your whiteboard, trying to make it perfect. All right, so now that you have your 12 parts, we know how many to color in. How many would we color in? I hope you said 7. So let's color in our 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Check in with your partner. Did they color in and shade 7/12 of their whole? We would also want to consider drawing our bracket and putting a 1 to show that this area model represents one whole. All right, we did an area model. Did your partner get it? Would you give them any feedback? Did they give you any feedback you want to consider? All right, so go ahead and erase your area model. We now have seen a tape diagram and an area model. We're working on various models for our objective. Now we're going to make a number line. So we'll draw our number line. So on your whiteboard, get ready with your number line. We know, oops, it's gonna have an arrow. It starts at 0, and we need 1 whole because the number line represents 1 whole. And now we know we need to cut it and partition it into 12 pieces because the denominator is 12. So again, I'm going to cut mine into halves and fourths, and then 1, 2. And then we could label them. We know that's 1/12, 2/12, and mine's going to get messy. It's starting to look like some of your whiteboards, isn't it? You know who you are. All right, so I'm not going to continue to label because mine will look very, very messy. But I could use it to help me count, and then we'll shade in. Hopefully you got 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to double check my thinking here because it got a little messy for me. 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12, 5/12, 6/12, 7/12. Oh my goodness. All right. Yours should definitely look better than mine. I'm sorry, this is an atrocious piece of work I'm showing you. Just awful. That's what you don't want yours to look like. All right, but hopefully you have 7/12 on your number line. Check in with your partner because you guys are going to work together soon, and we want to make sure you are able to do all of these different models. Good to go? Erase your whiteboards. What is the next model we have on our list? These are all the ways we have to be able to make it. And the next one is a circle model. So we're going to draw a nice big circle on our boards. And we know we're cutting it into 12 pieces. So my best way again is half, fourths, and then I know I can cut each of these into 3 pieces. 3, 6, 9, 12. Okay, again, it's not perfect. I should be being more precise. I hope you are. And then how many units would we shade in? 7, because the numerator says so. So we're going to color in 7. That means maybe those are the 7 pieces of pizza that are already claimed. 3, 4. Okay. There are 7 twelfths that are filled in. We just represented using a circle model. The next thing we're going to do is make sure we can write an equation of unit fraction. So go ahead and erase your model. And now we're going to make an equation, and I'm going to name it, says unit fraction. So unit fractions, right away we should think, what's in the numerator? I hope you said 1. So to make 7/8 on your whiteboard, go ahead, you can pause this and work with your partner. What would the equation be made out of unit fractions? I'm going to do it while you work. Okay, I hope you said that 7 twelfths equals 1 12th plus 1 12th plus 1 12th plus 1 12th. I'm going to go back and check. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have 7 yet. Plus 1 12th plus 1 12th plus 1 12th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is how we represent 7 twelfths in an equation of unit fractions. You've been doing a really great job at that for this whole week. So this should be something I know it's going to be easy breezy for you. All right, erase your boards. And now this is where we might have lots of different answers when we get to our 5th expectation for our various model. It says in our 5th one that we have to have another equation. So if we've done an equation using unit fractions, now we can represent 7 twelfths by decomposing 7 twelfths into a sum of any fractions. So I might choose that 7 twelfths equals 5 twelfths plus 2 twelfths. Okay, go ahead, work with your partner, pause the video. What other ways can you come up with that you could write an equation for 7 twelfths? Go ahead and do that. All right, hopefully you came up with lots of ideas. One idea could have been 1 12th plus 6 twelfths. I already did 2 twelfths plus 5 twelfths. You might have also come up with 3 twelfths plus 4 twelfths, because 3 twelfths and 4 twelfths would give you 7. So we had a few different examples you could have done there. Okay, now we're going to get some partner practice before we go off on your own. So please get out your purple packet and find page 27. All right, if you are still looking, pause the video till you find it. I'm going to keep going. All right, our directions tell us that we are going to draw a number line to represent the fractional amount. Then we'll write an equation to decompose the fraction. I think you know how to do that. Please pause the video, work with your friend, and then come back to see and check your work. Go ahead and pause and get started. All right, now that you're back, your number line should have said this, and you know it's 4/5 is what we're working with. So we only have one whole, so we're going to make a 0, and we'll make a 1. Oops, not a 0 again, a 1. And then we know it's cut into 5 parts. It's partitioned into 5. Hopefully you labeled your number line, that would be 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and 1 whole we know is the same as 5/5. And I'm sorry, it's really hard to draw on the screen. I have a little tiny box like this big to write on. All right, so 4/5 to represent it, we would have shaded 1, 2, 3, 4. So hopefully you have 4/5 shaded. And then for your equation, you would have said that 4/5 equals, and it didn't tell us actually if we had to use unit fractions. You might have done 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. You could have done 1/5 plus 3/5. You could have done 2/5 plus 2/5. And if you did 3/5 plus 1/5, that's the same as 1/5 plus 3/5. Nice job. Go on to number 2 with your partner. Go ahead and pause and work, and then come back to check your answers. When checking your answers, you would have a big square for the area model. They gave you a circle. It shows us that our fractional amount is 5/6. So we'll cut our whole into 6. I did that by cutting it into thirds first, and then I cut the thirds in half because 3 times 2 equals 6. And then I know I'm shading in 5 parts. 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts. So you should have 5/6 shaded in, and you might still be labeling them as all 1/6. We would want our brackets to show this was 1 whole. And then an equation, it says write an equation to show one way to decompose the fraction. So many ways. Unit fractions. 5/6 equals 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. You might have done 2/6 plus 3/6. You might have done 1/6 plus 4/6. You might have done 2/6 plus 3/6, I think I already said, which is the same as 3/6 plus 2/6, or 4/6 plus 1/6. So you could have written that in many different ways. Nice job. I have this feeling you're nailing this. All right, and we are moving on now to the next one. I think it's your last one. And now you get to pick your models to represent 2/3 hours. We have several different ways. If you can't remember them, I would go back to the slide that lists them all in order, where we had an area model, a tape diagram, a number line, a circle model. You have equations with unit fractions or equations that are written in any way of decomposing. Go ahead and do this with your partner, and after that, I'll give you your next assignment. Okay. If you had done a tape diagram, it'd be a rectangle cut into 3 parts, partitioned into 3, and you would have colored in 2. All right, I want to still show it represents 1 whole. You might have done your area model. It represents 1 whole, cut into thirds, and you shade it in 2 parts. You might have done a number line. 0 to 1 shows it's represented. 1 whole is represented, and this shows thirds and cut into 3 parts. And we'd shade in 2, put your little dot, show that's 2/3. You could have done a circle model where it's cut into thirds. I always think of like the peace sign with this one. It's the only way I can do it. And then we would have shaded in 2/3, or all of those equations. 2/3 equals 1/3 plus 1/3. Or, well, that's kind of it, because there's not lots of other ways to make 2. So that's it, all those different ways. All right, so now you're ready to do some work. You may continue on your own, or you can work with a partner. So as we look through it, you'll be in your white packet on page 41. And it gives you some examples. I do want us to talk about this one first because they actually are showing a real science tool that you could use to measure liquids. I have these in my kitchen. I use them. They're measuring cups, and I use them often when I'm measuring liquids and putting them in a recipe. If I'm making a smoothie and I only want so much almond milk in it, maybe I would use this. So they are showing you here that the number line is actually a vertical number line, which is interesting for the half cup and the 1 cup, but we're still going to think of the 3/4 cups of juice. And this should not get in the way, this visual, because we know the fraction is 3/4, it tells us. So we'll make that horizontal number line here still, just like you did in practice, and make your equation. Okay, you have a tape diagram very similar to one that we had done. I'm just going to go through a couple and make sure there's no other things that look funny, because that just was weird to me when I saw it. We hadn't seen that before. Okay. We have a circle model. We'll make in these an area model and then an equation. So remember that new learning today, our area model is a big square. And then here, 2 different models. You can pick any 2 models you want to represent this fractional amount. And then we would have an exit ticket. We won't do an exit ticket today because those are still back in the classrooms, but hopefully tomorrow there will be somebody who can look over your work from today and help you out, give you some feedback before you move on to the next part. All right, great job, guys. Go ahead and get to work on that white packet and do your best thinking. When you finish, please make sure that your standards mastery is done. There were 5 of you. Mason, Luna, Chris, Mikey, and Emma. Let's get that done if you didn't finish it yesterday. Please finish up your blue pathway in Ready. And once that is finished, you have some choice time. I would just make sure it's something quietly in the room where you're not distracting your other classmates. If it's Prodigy, that's okay. I would consider some Freckle time. Remember, in Freckle, they actually have some math fact practice, and we know some of us are stuck on those. I would highly, 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 highly recommend you going to Freckle and that you take a look at that math fact practice or those things towards your goals from NWEA, because NWEA is coming. It's in a month. So get some more practice towards your goals specifically. All right. Have a great day, you guys.